500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die." The phantom, the ghost who walks. The phantom, enemies beware. The phantom's always there, but you won't find the phantom. He finds you.
G'day everyone, and welcome to episode 129, we think, of Expand the Phantom podcast. I'm Dan Fraser, and tonight I'm joined by Jermaine Parker. How are you, Jermaine?
Good, mate. Good. Eagles are in the finals. Hawthorn's out of the finals.
Lions are still in the finals.
Yeah, at least for another week.
Yep.
The Bulldogs are out as well. Carlton are down the bottom. It's all going pretty good.
A few drive-bys there.
Absolutely.
Richmond
an assault rifle.
Yeah. We're not going to get bogged down talking footy for too long, even though the two of us have both got teams in the finals. He who has got a team not in the finals is actually leaving the country. He's so upset and he's not going to see any more September action. So Hawthorn fans have got thin skins, I tell you.
They're a bit precious, the old Hawthorn fans, aren't they?
Out and they depart the
have
country.
to go sook it.
No, Steve's off.
Could be argued that might be a good thing, though, if they're out of the country, the Hawthorn supporters.
Yeah. So Stephen's off to the Emerald Isle. He's off to the home of Lightning Strike Comics. He's gone to find them himself over in Ireland. Sick of waiting for the shipment to come to Phantom's Vault. Stephen has gone over to pick him up in person. So he's off for a few weeks, and we wish him all the best because it's been a long year for Stephen, we know, and he's been really looking forward to this trip. So happy Phantoming over in Ireland, Stephen.
Yes, happy Phantoming, and we want our comics, Stephen. Make sure you get them.
Anyway, without any further ado, we'll bring in Stephen East, number one, Grange Wallis. Step in for today, but really delighted to have you on the podcast, Grange. Phantom cover artist for Frew. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here for a deep dive. We've been on the podcast once before with you blokes, and I suppose we're settling in for a longer chat. I've got a cup of tea, bottle of water. Should be fun. Excellent.
So that was, of course, the preview to Supanova, because you went and attended the Frew booth for the first time with how many? You've got 4 covers, 3 published and 1 coming. How many?
I had 2 at this stage.
Yep.
When I was up there. The third one just came out a couple of weeks back. That was 1844, The Slaves.
The Slaves.
That's the one.
If you're not watching us on YouTube, you should be. You can now see the cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the
Just
one.
Dan, when you hold something up as a show and tell, you've got to speak at the same time, so that way it goes to you.
Not on the video that I'm recording at this end, mate. All of the screens are the same. Yeah. We did discuss that before the podcast. Jermaine was very happy.
No fancy editing feature today.
No. Mate, you're on the Expand the Phantom podcast. There's nothing fancy about it.
Fair enough.
Fancy, but we're cheap.
But yeah, sorry to get back to so I'd only been 2 covers in, so a lot of people didn't know who I was, I don't think. And it was a really great experience. I got to meet you guys, hung out with all the good Phantom fans on Friday night in Sydney, and then we had the next 2 days after that together. It was a ripping trip, and it was my first convention at all that I've ever worked on. I've been to them as a attendee. Sorry, as like a guest, but not as a guest. You know,
as an attendee.
Yeah, I had a rather first time.
It's a fan.
Like that. But it was great. I had a ball. I met a lot of great people. Took up some sketch covers, and they seemed to be pretty popular. And it was great. And all the guys from Frew were great. And obviously the Leaf Hawk Memorial Dinner. That's a mouthful.
It really
is.
That was amazing. That was really good. So yeah, it was a great weekend. I think I'm definitely going to make sure I get back up there next year. I think.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Once you kind of go once, it's like, yeah, no, this is what everyone's been talking about. I want to go again, and you usually make an excuse to go again. So it's not surprising to hear that. So a couple of questions just for the weekend, if you don't mind. What time did you finish drinking on the Friday night, and how did you pull up after that?
I feel like my reputation has been unfairly tarnished.
I 100% agree.
There was a few pre-mitigating factors that. So first of all, I decided to come and meet you guys, and quickly it was 11. I'm pretty sure, or maybe 11:30. So it's nothing outlandish. So I'm not sure what time that you have to get in the cot and have your bottle, but with me, I think 11:30 is quite respectable. But I was actually a little bit nervous about coming out and seeing everybody because I hadn't, generally speaking, outside of that day and speaking to you guys on the podcast at one time, I didn't really know anybody there outside of Trevor and David Buddy. So, there was a little bit of anxiety and involved. So not that I'm a terribly anxious person, but I was a little bit too nervous to eat. So I didn't have any dinner. And then when I was about to make tracks about 10 o'clock or 10:30, and Dan can correct me if I'm wrong on this, the delightful Bradley and Joy made it a late appearance. So as I was leaving, I ended up buying Dan and I a drink, or Dan bought myself and I a drink. And then, sat down with those two and kicked on for another hour. So I think coupled with no dinner, an extra couple of drinks that I wasn't intending to have, they just made me feel a little bit dusty the next day. If anything, I don't think that's the most, I don't feel like I'm like Freddie Mercury or anybody too crazy.
No, it's not like, because the story is exactly as you told it. If we were rock stars, we would have left at 11:30 to kick on at the next place, and that certainly didn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no marching powder. There was nothing, nothing too crazy except for a couple of beers and no dinner.
I agree, Grange. I can't believe that's the first story.
You ran 5Ks the next day, which I was impressed with.
Yeah, well, I made promises to people that I was going to do that, and I regretted them for 4.5 of those kilometres.
I could imagine. I could definitely imagine.
No, it's all good. I haven't come back from a Sydney weekend fighting fit and ready to go. You do have so much fun. You want to stay awake for as long as you possibly can, and there's no doubt that even Jermaine going to bed at 9:30 or 9:45, whatever it was, Germ, when bedtime.
Well, no, that's not quite true because
a bit earlier.
Well, no. I was in bed by 10ish, but I couldn't go to sleep because you didn't have your card. So it was either I stay up or you bunked in with Grange for the night or down the corridor or something.
Oh, we would work something
out. To be fair, you had Winnie the Pooh and Tigger to keep yourself company. I think you could as well.
That's exactly right.
Nice mural, by the way, Jermaine.
So I'm in my daughter's room at the moment, and I've got one on the other wall. So my stepfather painted the mural. So it was the oldest, and then when she got a little bit older for it, it went to the next one. So she's in the other room. It's the bright pink room. Yeah, but no. So what? So would you say that meeting people and stuff like that would be one of the highlights of, or the highlight of the weekend?
Well, a double-edged sword. Some people were a little too crazy for me, and I mean that in the nicest of ways, where their phantom fandom knew no bounds, and I was absolutely impressed, but I actually kind of felt like a bit of an amateur going up there and trying to talk the phantom to people. So meeting people was absolutely a delight. I liked absolutely everybody I met. I just couldn't keep up with some people because some people have, hard and fast rules about how the phantom's supposed to be portrayed. Other people want to see, some experimentation with the phantom moving forward, and it was just a whirlwind. So I mean, if I'm saying anything at all, is that I was kind of a little bit exhausted on a social level by having to keep up with everybody
Yeah.
and trying to remember everybody's name first of all, because I if people are going to take the time to come out and see all the artists at the booth, the least I could do is try and remember everybody's name and, you know, keep the conversation going wherever I could. So, you know, there was a lot of concentration and a few things like that, which I was actually surprised it really wore me out. But in the best kind of way. Like, I was happy tired. It wasn't like I was sad tired or anything.
People do wear people out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is a hard truth.
Yeah.
So can we go back a little bit further than June, maybe, Grange, and find out a little bit about when you first came in touch with the phan? Because you're younger than us. Jermaine likes to boast how young he is. You'd be a little bit younger than him, I reckon. Child of the early 80s?
Early 80s, 83.
It's the same age.
There you go.
What month?
December.
Oh, damn, I'm older.
So I'm still the young one. Still got a full set of hair.
Oh, wow. This guy.
Yeah, I reckon do it.
Yeah, well, I suppose with the phantom, the phantom was always there, if that makes sense. It feels like a line from a song, but like the tie that, Dan, you've got in your phantom collection behind you on your right-hand side, my brother actually had that tie from a Davenport boxes combo thing from when we were kids, and I remember that. You know, and I remember it always being there at the comic book stands in the because I used to what I used to do with my free time in the ease of the 80s, where you could just like roam free before the days of Mr. Cruel or whatever his name was. I just walk up to the chemist when I was bored after school. Sorry, not the chemist, the news agency, when I was bored after school, and I'd not read the comics, but I'd just look at the art, because like initially, like Superman was my gateway into comics, like the Christopher Reeves movie, and then like that just like blew up my mind. And then when I found out there was drawings to go along with the art, I started drawing Superman quite a lot. And then I remember getting a stack of Phantom comics as well from my dad, because when I was a kid, I really wasn't into the whole reading thing. Like it took me a long time, you know, a few years to get into the reading. And what my dad did was he got me a stack of comics, and he's like, well, and then I'd be like pestering mum and dad to read them to me, and then they're like, oh no, we don't know how to read them, you know, we don't know where to follow the speech bubbles around, you're gonna have to figure it out for yourself. So
well played, mum and dad.
Like I told that story at my dad's 50th, and I got tracked up because I was just like, you know, that's pretty big, you know, like you got to let your kids find their way in this world. I think you can't just gift them everything. So like reading for me was a hard won battle. Like I'm still a pretty slow reader, to be honest with you, but so that was a really big thing for me with comics. Sort of, you know, they gave me access to reading, but then more, and because I was bored of it trying to read, I'd be drawing the pictures more than I was reading them. Yeah. And then obviously that's where we've ended up here. Like you can't see, my room's not as neat as Dan's, but I've got a big collection in front of me, you know, that I'm always drawing off and reference. I've got 4 18-inch Ninja Turtle figures here, a dinosaur, Iron Giant, Superman, Phantom's head, video game characters, toys just laying everywhere. Got a Terminator here that I was using as a reference. So, yeah.
That makes complete sense to have all your reference material in front of you rather than behind you. So we completely understand.
Yeah.
So are you in your studio now? Is this where you would normally do your drawing?
It's a temporary studio because my wife and I are moving in January. So I'm sort of bunkered down in sort of a spare room in where we're living at the moment. It's got another desk, 2 computers on the floor, all my shipping stuff, footies. It's just, the place is a mess. Tons of boxes to prepare for moving.
Yeah.
A storyboard I'm working on my own children's book and a few things like that. So.
Yeah, cool. And so are you, what's in front of you? Do you work on your computer or do you work pen and paper?
Well, I do both, depending on what the job does. Generally, you know, with budgets being what they are, traditional is a lot slower, like for certain things. So like all my Phantom covers to date have been digital, just because I've got a drawing screen, which is this light here that you can see, the blue light.
Yep.
And then I've got a laptop here. My computer was dying. My big computer was dying when I was flying up to Sydney, and then I was getting all the data taken off it.
Yeah,
just as a precautionary step. And then when I got back a couple of weeks later, I had to just find this old laptop, and I'm going to invest in a new computer properly at the end of the year. But yeah, I just haven't had the time to think about getting a new computer because I'm in the middle of footy cards. So I'm doing 2 sets of footy cards this year, and I'm doing.
So is that for next year?
Yeah, for 2020. So we're working on those now. Obviously, I can't talk about that because it's all secretive.
Sure.
Can I just ask one question?
Do you reckon? Before you do you reckon there's much of a chance of hardcore AFL fans tuning into a Phantom podcast and overhearing your?
I'll post it and we'll see what they think.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest. I was just going to say the Phantom stuff doesn't really generate much traffic with my original crowd, the sports crowd. They're still like, what's this Phantom stuff? Give me my football team mascot. Draw a picture of my favorite player.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So what happens if, say, like a player that you do, so let's just, I don't know, and then they switch clubs or something like that, because you're doing images and drawings and stuff like that before they've even started next year. So, and there's a lot more players that get traded this year than what they used to.
Yeah, well, it's not uncommon for me to draw maybe 1 or 2 players for each club because of that sort of scenario. Like without getting specific, the cards that I do for AFL team coach, the Star Wilds, for example, they're the rarest ones of the cards. And then there's extra rare ones within that set. So there's the Star Wilds, which is 1 of 18 clubs, 1 player per club. Then there's this Trophy Star Wilds, and it's usually they try and marry up like the player that won the Brownlow for Club X, plus the guy who got the Coleman, NAB Rising Star, or whatever else.
Sure.
Yeah. So they don't usually, I guess, switch clubs, but you wouldn't do someone like an Eddie Betts, for example, for Adelaide, because the chances are you're not really sure whether he's going to be staying or going.
Yeah. So, like, we avoid those players generally, like the ones that have already been heavily linked to other clubs.
Give us any examples from last year? Obviously, you can't talk about this year's work, but can you give us any examples from last year of
Gold Coast? Gold Coast.
It'd be hard to find any player from there, wouldn't it?
It's hard to pull them out of that club. But to be honest with you, like all what I'm about to say aside, like I actually want the Gold Coast to be successful, and I really like. If you look at what's happening with the Giants, fair enough, they got a better setup, like a launch into the league. But once they get, things can move quickly. I mean, Brisbane was a basket case 2 years ago. Carlton was like the same 2 years ago, even if some people were saying at the start of this year. So, I do think that can change. They've just got to get the culture right, and I think if they get Bergeron and a few things like that, it'll be good. But there was a small, quick little rumor about David Swallow moving on, and we had pegged him from the start as being like the person that we're going to do.
Sure.
Then we held off on him and waited till the end of the trade period, and there was a few delays, and we changed the Bulldogs player a couple of times. We changed Geelong a couple of times.
Yeah.
I suppose
it runs around with it. Like it doesn't really bother me too much. It's just I've got to try and get another card. Sometimes it's hard on the deadline, so you've got to get it done really quickly.
Yeah.
But
would you? I don't, because you've been doing those for 2-3 years now. The cards.
I'm on my 3rd set now, and I'm doing an extra set, a new series within the set, which is going to be more available, which I can't discuss.
Sure. Yep. So would you, doing it all digitally, if you had been doing the cards back when Buddy left Hawthorn, could you have simply changed jerseys and made him the Sydney card?
Yes. I draw so I basically draw all the players in a bare grey top. Yep. And then, because we don't put too many of the logos and sponsor logos because they can change and that's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think it actually dates the cards as well. Yes. So
they're more classic if they're the pure jersey.
Yeah, and just the AFL logo.
Yeah.
So if they update the AFL logo in the future, then obviously they'll date it. But outside of that, they should all. Sorry, I'm just looking because the team coaches are really great, and they framed to the first set that I did, and I'm hoping they do it again this year. Hopefully they do this. But yeah, it's just like looking at them now. Like I think I like. There's a couple of already players that moved. Like James Beams was Brisbane, and then he's gone back to Collingwood.
Yeah.
Tom Lynch, obviously from the Suns, and then Dale House for the Bulldogs. So like all
You're
of
the
those.
kiss of death.
Yeah. What was that?
You're the kiss of death, the kiss of trade.
Yeah. So maybe there was a fair few in that, but the thing is, like, it's kind of cool because that kind of dates the cards, but at the same time in a nice way.
Yeah. Looking back over any collectible, whether it's footy cards or Phantom stuff, like the change in logos, the old AFL logo, which was more crest shaped than the current oval.
Yeah. It's like
that's late '90s stuff, and I'm really proud of wearing my Brisbane Lions jersey with that on it because it shows I was a fan 20 years ago before all these bandwagoners.
Yeah, I got one of those new heritage ones for Carlton, and it's got the old AFL crest on it too. I like it a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So, not wanting to focus too much on the AFL, last question about the cards for me. Do you have like certain players or certain attributes to players that you find more fun to draw? Like, is it, say, for instance, like dreadlocks with Nick Natanui or who's that Essendon guy? Or do you have like certain attributes that you prefer to draw? Or are they more fun than others?
Yeah, well, Nick Nat's obviously a visual character. Like I see him with his dreadlocks, and in the way he hunts the ball, reminds me of the Predator. Like I've always wanted to sort of draw a mashup of like him in like a Predator costume with like an eagle skull like looking motif going on. But like it's not just because I'm a Carlton fan, I'm sure. But I've drawn Patrick Cripps a few times, and he's fun just because, like, I feel like I'm just drawing like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Carlton jersey. And he's got like a good classic, Captain America kind of look to him, and like, and he's a really nice guy too. So, I've always liked my heroes be, sport, movies, comics, wherever, to sort of be like that strong, silent type, noble guy that always, grits his teeth and does the hard thing that's not always necessarily the easiest thing. And he's sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, we could almost use that as a segue to get back to the Phantom. Right?
Take it.
I was about to. But James said he had one last question about cards. I've got one last question about footy drawings. We're recording this only 3 days after the news about Danny Frawley dying. And I don't share a lot of things on Facebook at all, but I had to share your picture of Spud Frawley that you either published that night or early the next morning.
Well, to be fair, that's just a happy coincidence that everyone saw Spud Frawley into it. Like, that's an old drawing from 2016, I think.
Right, okay.
Okay. Wow.
But that was going to be part of my question, was how quick did you whip that up?
Yeah, so I didn't draw that within the time. I did do a really simple picture of Lou Richards after he passed, because I had a really good thing with Lou Richards with Saturday footy show in the handball segment. I used to love that. So I drew a little sketch of that. But with Spud Frawley, I think when I drew that picture, I was sort of putting Nathan Brown, him. Is it Nathan Brown? Anyway, yeah, like
Nathan Burke.
Nathan Burke, that's it. Sorry, I was like packaging through like my favourite Saints players from yesteryear.
Yeah.
So he was definitely somebody I looked at. I was looking at Greenwald as well, and so he's a combination of a few Saints players.
Right.
And the thing that I like about the Saints, when they're is that they are a tough and rolling team. Like, it's always going to be their year eventually. You know what I mean? And they roll with the punches, and they're
every Saints fan listening to this has just rolled over and cried because they know it's true.
No, but the thing is, they're like the Bulldogs. They're going to get their day. Like, it's going to have to happen one day. Like, they're not a weak club in the sense that they're going to die.
They had it 60 odd years ago.
Sorry?
They had it 60 years ago. That's good enough.
Yeah, but it'll come again. I mean, like, even Ross Lyon, I mean, he was a kick away from being a premiership coach. But, like, the thing that I like about the Saints is that, St Kilda, as a Melburnian, St Kilda is a rough side of town. It's not necessarily, like, it's got a bay and it's got a beach. It's not that pretty, and it's still got a bit of a seedy underbelly. And I mean that with all due respect, because it's got a lot of great art culture and stuff. But it is a bit of a sort of a backroom, barroom brawler sort of caricature. And I think that, Danny Farrelly was a, big strapping country guy from Ballarat area. And yeah, I think it suits, like that picture suits him because, he was a tough guy, but he was, battling his own demons. And
he wore his
I'm
heart
actually
on
quite
his
sad that he
sleeve.
passed away because I really liked him on the radio. I thought he was hilarious.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, and I was shattered when I heard the news. I think every football fan was. He just he was part of the fabric, no matter which club you supported. So,
yeah, he's a real football person. There's a few players here, there, and everywhere that transcend the club that they played for, and you end up liking them so much you forget who they played for, and they just become football people. Yeah, and he was definitely at the top of that list.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. Anyway, that was Vale, Danny Frawley, but that was a terrible segue back to the fandom. Jermaine's one was much, much better.
Happy fantoning, everybody.
Yeah. And thanks, Joe Grange, for joining us on our football podcast.
Wow.
So let's go back to your journey with the character. Then you talked about 20 minutes ago, I guess, before we got our.
So how did you get the gig?
No, I'm getting to that, Germ. I'm not coming that far.
All right.
Phantom movie. You must have been right in the right age group to get along and see the Phantom film in cinemas.
Well, yeah, much like Sammy J, I got lured in by the show bags. Excuse me, a couple of teas not agreeing with me, but it's a digestive too. Who knew? So like I just always had Phantom stuff around. Like I was either getting it here willy nilly from like the news agency. I used to like watching the Defenders of the Earth cartoon. I was big into cartoons, big into toys as well, and I always wanted the Phantom figure, which I finally got one off Duncan Munro. Shout out to Duncan. We did a swap there for a sketch cover and a figure at Supanova, which was a good deal for him. The figure's not as good as I thought it was going to be. It's real 80s.
Is it the one with the figure on the back so he punches?
Oh man, that stick is so long too. It's like it's like a nail.
But the good thing is we are going to get a decent Phantom figurine in the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do. I actually got in contact with Big Fist Studios. It's Big Fist Studios, right?
Boss Fight.
Big Boss Fight.
Yeah, because I was like so excited, and I've always wanted to design a Phantom figure, and I was like, "Please let me help you do some concept art." And he's like, "Yeah, thanks, but we've got artists already." And I'm like, "Yeah, fair enough." But yeah, if you need me, I'm here. But yeah, no. So basically, the two things happened for me to get the job, and they were sort of like, I hate to be one of these people who uses the word serendipitous, but it seems like something that an astrologist reader would say. But like, I've seen Jamie. I don't know how Jamie Johnson and I became connected on Facebook. We just were somehow. And then I was just seeing him doing all these Phantom stuff and Batman stuff, and then releasing Phantom covers and stuff like that. And I was like, oh wait, yeah, there's a Phantom comic here in Australia. And I was like, why aren't I doing Phantom work anymore? Phantom work, comic book work anymore. I went to Comic-Con in 2012 and sort of fell out of love with the industry because I was just like seeing all this talent just put in this room, doing Artist Alley, just like killing themselves at home, doing the work to get into the comic books, probably not getting paid as much as they needed to be getting paid to earn a decent living, and then having to go to all these events and just like selling their wares. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but at that time in my life, I was like, that's not for me. So I came home to Australia and I was like, okay, what do you do with a skill set of drawing muscle men and women? And, like, how am I going to make a career out of that? And that's when I diverged and went into sport because I always loved the 80s mascots for AFL. Sorry to get back to the AFL. Yeah. But then I sort of gave away comics as an ambition. And then, like, I was looking at myself and I was looking at my work and I was like, okay, so I'm making a decent living here, but I'm not making a full living. I might have 2 or 3 days a week, every, maybe 1 or 2 weeks a month where I didn't have any work on. So like, that's a big shortfall. That could be almost like a whole week without work.
Were you,
and,
did
it's
you have
nice
another
to
job
freelance
at the time to supplement the art, or did
Sorry?
you? did you have another job, part time or something?
No,
like
no,
that
no.
to
I've been
supplement
working
that
for
way?
myself for 7 years.
Yeah, right.
But
Oh wow.
like, and I had a bit of a health setback a couple of years ago that really sort of it's taken me about 18 months to get my career back to where it was before I got sick. But you know, like I do storyboarding, like I do a little, like tiny little bit of storyboarding, not much. I don't have the skill for it, but like I've just been working in advertising and a few different things here, there, and everywhere, and you know, just design stuff. And it's been enough to prop me up and my wife for the last couple of years. But then I was still thinking, you know, there's a couple of days here and there that need to be filled, and I was like, why aren't I doing comic book work? And I saw Jamie doing his work, and then Darren Close, who runs this drawing weekly challenge where it's just basically draw a picture of a superhero that's nominated by Oz Comics on Facebook. So if you can look that up. And he did one for the Phantom, and I was like, I'll just draw a picture of Phantom. And then I really, really enjoyed it. And I was like, I haven't drawn a picture of Phantom in forever. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then I was like, you know what? That's pretty good. I'm like, I feel good about it. It was like the Phantom sort of sneaking in a forest that was lit by, you know, firelight. Like it was either like going to danger or like stalking people that were running away from danger. I don't know what it was. But I liked it. It was moody. And then I ended up going up the road that morning after I'd finished the piece and got the latest issue of the Phantom, and then got and read it and really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh man, I've forgotten about the Phantom, like for a couple of years. Like I was been out of the jungle. And then I really, really enjoyed it. And then I got all their contact details. So I ended up emailing Dudley and said, "G'day, Dad. This is me. This is who I am. This is a picture I've drawn of the Phantom. I'd love to do a cover, yada, yada, yada." And I've been messaging Jamie about it as well and asking him, you know, what's the deal? And he was like saying, yeah, no, they're good blokes. Rah, rah. So, yeah, then a couple of weeks went by maybe and no answer. So then I ended up calling him directly and I said, oh, can I speak to Dudley at Frew? And then they were like, put me straight through to him, you know, straight to the editor. And I was like, oh, this is a lot easier than when I was dealing with the football clubs. But and then I ended up having a really nice chat to Dudley for a few moments. And he said, look, you know, give me a couple of weeks. And he said, we really liked your stuff. I'm glad that you called because, to be honest with you, I might not have gotten back to you because, you know, like the emails coming in and out. You know, you might have just fallen back into the back catalogue. And then they ended up a couple of weeks later giving me my first issue, which was the stone carving people. And I really kind of liked the story for what it was. Thank you kindly, Dan.
Here's one I prepared earlier, or you did.
Way earlier. But yeah, and then yeah, that was my first issue, and it went through the pipeline, you know, got approved, got printed, and there I was as new Phantom cover artist. And
so that was what, March, April this year?
August last year.
Oh, August last year. I'm thinking of the second one, which was
so the second one. Had
nice save, Dan. Nice save, Dan.
Actually, was the last one? The second one November, and then the first one. So
I'm just making it up. I'm just looking for an excuse to hold these up, to be honest.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, so that one was a bit of fun. And you've actually bought the poster for that. I've just noticed it's on your wall back there.
Yeah, other side. Yeah.
So originally when I coloured it, because you know, fire dragon, you'd think you'd make it red. Yeah. I actually ended up not liking it, especially because I thought it was going to kill the Phantom's logo. And then we ended up doing this sort of cool colour scheme to it, and I actually think I prefer it a lot more.
The red or the blue?
It's more like a shadow creature now. But I liked it because I was just trying to make it look like it, you know, like a 1950s pulp hero. Obviously I said 50s, which predates James Bond, but you know, like one of those classic, you know, film noir sort of things.
I remember there was, well, certainly from myself, there was so much talk about this cover in particular. I was certainly involved in a lot of conversation about these. It's like not much we've ever seen before on a Phantom.
It reminds me of It reminds me of what's that? The Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I see that cover, the one that Dan's holding up, which is what issue number is that one, Dan?
1834.
1834. It reminds, because I guess a lot of it's because there's a green chick and there's a green chicken. And
like,
yeah.
I didn't mean to be rude, but yeah, like I was just like, it feels kind of a little bit like superficial to just because of the green chick, but like I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's a very fair connection, but I think it's because I was like poring over the images that are in the actual comic itself.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, you know, like there's this main chick who looks like Elvira or the mother from the Monster family, the Munster family.
Yeah.
I was like going for that sort of like green, sort of gothic look, and then I'm like, it doesn't feel future space agey to me. So like that's the frustrating thing about an artist, where like people say stuff and you're like, but you don't know what I was doing. That you don't understand my internal monologue of when I was creating that. So far, anyway. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I apologize for me being a little bit defensive, but yeah.
Well, I as I said, I love the lighting of it, and anyone who's watching us on YouTube at about the 34-minute mark or whatever it is since we started recording, I do have the poster frame there behind me, and I actually went over and adjusted it a couple of times once I turned the video on to get the glare off the frame, and I did it 2 or 3 times before I realised that wasn't glare coming from a light. That was the light from the photo. From the image, because it's so bright, it just pops off the poster so much. I thought it was a reflection of a light.
Well, yeah, I've actually got one right up on the desk behind me. I've been meaning to get a frame for it as well. But yeah, I don't even know where I got onto lighting from. Like, it just started to be something I really just love doing.
Yeah.
Like making things, you know, backlit and a bit more dynamic, you know, like classic 80s movie posters.
Yeah.
You know, like we grew up in an era where movie posters were still being drawn beautifully. And, you know, Hollywood's actually going back and trying to recapture our nostalgia for it. I mean, if you look at great TV shows on Netflix like Stranger Things, you know, those new posters are very artistic, like Baby Driver, the Han Solo Star Wars movie, and you know they've all gone back to that drawing style, and it's something that it's something I'm pushing for in my own art.
Have you ever seen Drew Struzan's take on the Phantom film poster?
I probably have, but here's the name that I was trying to think of when I was trying to give my answer, and I was like, yeah, I always forget it.
Yeah, right.
Remembering artists' names, I have to like Google their art.
Yep.
What I know it for, but yeah. His work, he was the beast back in the 80s, and you know he did the Goonies, he did Star Wars. Sorry, not Star Wars. Back to the Future ones, which I love. And yeah, I'm probably sure that I've seen the Phantom one. I'm gonna go and check it out after this. And
there might even be 2. Is there, Jermaine? 2 versions?
Yeah, there's 2 versions.
Yeah.
Fine, I'll look it up.
There's there is an article about him on chroniclechamber.com if you the search
will probably be my first hit.
So when you do your art, that's the style that or when you do your Phantom covers, that's the style that you're going for, the movie poster look, the Drew Stan look and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I'm always trying to do is like, so I've got some more Phantom covers coming. I haven't started them yet, but I'm at a little bit of a war with myself in terms of how I'm going to go about it. So I've been given I've been given the issues that I'm going to be drawing for reference, and I haven't had a chance to really look into it. I've just been flicking through them, but I've been speaking to a couple of people. Like John Cook was saying to me at John Cookson, was talking to me at Supernova, and he was like, you know, if you didn't work digitally, there's a massive market in drawing them traditionally.
He wants to buy one off you. Yeah.
I wouldn't say no, but
he's got one of the biggest Phantom art collections in the world. So, but no, he's right.
Yeah, it's something I want to do traditionally. Like, I'm not scared of doing them traditionally. I feel like I've had a bit of success with the range of sketch covers that I've done. So, like, drawing traditionally is not a phobia of mine. But in terms of the budget per issue for what you get for the cover, versus what I can do digitally in terms of the speed, the lack of worry about breaking, the art traditionally. Although, like, I'm trying to decide whether I do the next series of covers that I'm doing traditionally or digitally.
Yeah.
It's just
What is the time difference?
hours. Like, honestly,
So are we talking about 10, 20 hours or 5 hours or 2 hours?
Well, a smart artist never tells you how quickly it takes them to do something
Yeah,
because it affects their billing.
Yeah, exactly.
But
would it be twice as long?
yeah, I would say it could be, I really don't know. Like, because I've never done the same volume.
Yeah.
Like, I've never hit a traditional artwork at the same specs as, those covers. So,
Right.
like, I've never, gone in there and painted them with the whites and the highlights and, color matched everything. Like,
Yeah.
I'd imagine that it would probably be a ratio of 1 to 3. Like,
yeah. Right. Wow.
like I reckon traditional, if I did it and hit the same quality, I reckon I'll be working 3 times as long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting 3 times the price for it, then it's not worth
Yeah.
your time.
And, like, obviously, there is the original art sale, which I can take into account. But at the same time, not everyone's going to buy the original art, but everyone's going to buy the comic. So for me, I feel almost duty bound to deliver my best possible outcome.
Yep.
Yep.
For everybody, opposed to just lining my own pocket, which makes the sketch covers a great way to get original art and some other things. But the thing is, I also want to challenge myself with doing traditionally. So, like, I'm splitting hairs at it at the moment. I'm in the middle of 3 board games. I'm illustrating 3 board games, 4 covers. Sorry, I'll let that go. And 2 series of footy cards at the moment. So, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit stressed. Just when I'm thinking about my work. So once I get through the footy stuff and the 2 board games, the 3 board games, I'll probably tackle the Phantom because it's not due until next year. So
yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh wow! So Frew that far ahead. That's pretty cool.
Well, just because I sort of lobbied them at the Lee Falk Memorial Dinner for a few things. Like, I wanted to, I think it's important. No, like, I am a freelancer, I understand that, but I think it's really good to have goals with any of your employers, even as a freelancer. Yep. So I did sort of ask them for the potential of doing a complete cover set for, like, one storyline. And it's not official just yet. And we're hoping that I'll do a series of covers that might interconnect or have some overlay and overplay. So yeah.
Don't say what you can't. Yeah. Don't say what you are. What you're not allowed to say. Don't want you to get into trouble.
Look, I'm hoping that my relationship with Glenn Dudley and the Frew crew is at a good point now. My last 2 covers have gone through some heavier revisions. Because I've had to draw people with various backgrounds. So, like, the last cover that you held up with the speech bubble, that was changed quite heavily because originally in the story, the person who's taking action with the Phantom, they were worried that the Phantom, the way I drew him, because, I'm thinking these guys are in a trench, they're about to bomb a gate to liberate some slaves. They're probably not laughing. And they're probably not terribly happy. If anything, they'll be pretty intense looking, even for the Phantom. So I was trying to capture that sort of fear. So the Phantom's actually got a much more neutral expression. The guy in the middle didn't change, but the guy that's carrying the bomb, he changed heavily because his appearance is quite different inside the book. So, you've got to obviously be aware of the climate. You're drawing a character that's got a few infamous traits to, like his background and the way he's interpreted by some people. So I've had to, tone down some of the things that I've done. And then my new cover, which you haven't seen yet, there's some children in the cover that are actually quite, like they're slave children. So it's very much like the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom sort of setup. Yeah. And that's what I was thinking of when I was drawing it. And they were worried that I drew them a little too emaciated. So I had to sort of fatten them up. So, but because of that
Yeah.
back and forth with Dudley and sitting next to Dudley at the memorial dinner, I feel, and Glenn, I've been speaking to him a lot more lately, and I feel like we've got a lot better relationship. And I really, like, I'm really grateful for them all to take a chance on new artists. And so far so good.
Yeah.
4 in the can, a few more coming, hopefully.
Without spoiling relationship secrets or anything like that, how do you as an artist respond to that sort of constructive criticism about or I guess direction from the editorial
Editors.
team? Yeah.
Like the people at King Features were absolutely, bang on with what they had to say. And generally speaking, criticism is not easy to take, but what it is important for is every time that you get, especially if it's good criticism as well, you always get a stronger product at the end. Like sometimes you just want to finish a job and wring your hands, like throw the water off and just like move on to the next job. But some of those jobs where you're really grinding to get it to the end and there's, like 3 or 4 little revisions and then one that comes like half a month later, you end up getting a better product in the end. One that, it works better for the brand, works better for, the collector and all that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, I was a little upset initially because I was worried that they thought that I was, they were worried that the way I drew some of the features on some of the people with, a different background, they were mistaking things that I do stylistically in terms of the way I proportionate a human body, like I do thin wrists and big hands because I've got thin wrists and big hands. And I sort of my favorite sort of physical body type for a superhero look is like the American basketball style, like where everything's sort of like round and super athletic. I'm not massive on the massive buff,
more lanky,
but I like it, super athletic. So like they interpreted some of my stylistic choices and but they're more worried about the way everybody would interpret it rather than just themselves and that sort of thing. So,
and we live in a lot more of a snowflake generation these days than what we used to. Yeah. I was looking at a Frew cover the other day and there's the Phantom strangling a native. That would not go today.
I don't know that you necessarily need to be a snowflake to find that unsavoury. You certainly couldn't publish something new looking like that today, and that's probably fair enough too.
Well, I think what it is I was listening to Bill Burr and Joe Rogan going at it on the Rogan podcast, and I think what we're experiencing now is the outrage thing, which is going to exhaust because you can't be outraged about everything. Everyone's rushing on the internet to like flame somebody or tear someone's career down and all that sort of stuff. But like, I think, like what somebody interprets as racist, sexist, or all those things, they're definitely granted. But I just feel like that people are just putting on way too much pepper. I mean, like you see with like footballers or, like mental health's the biggest thing in the game right now. It's because of the way people talk to them and abuse that people think that it's fair to throw out these professional athletes that at the end of the day, they're still human. They're working a job and they're hoping for the best. And they
have days when they don't perform at their best or for whatever reason. It could be, their mum's, their mum's sick or they got health problems with their children or whatever. So, no.
And I even have that with my own art. Like I remember, like I've drawn some pictures and I'm being like, I've been upset about something or I've had something, really on my mind. And then I look at the art and I'm like, God, I hate this. And I'm like, but the deadline's today. I'll see what they think. And they're like, great, loved it. And then you're like, oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
I really hate that. And then I can't believe they liked it. And then you like double check a few days later when you're feeling better and you're like, you sure you really like it? And they're like, yeah, no, we love it. I'm like, all right. And then you come back to it a couple of weeks later and you're like, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was. So, and like I've had some people like just say outlandishly cruel things about my work. Like I did when the first footy cards came out, we did Kennedy for West Coast. There you go. And somebody said on the team coach footy card Facebook page saying, oh my God, this artist is the worst. He should get the sack, and whoever approved it should get the sack. And my kid could do better, and rah, 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 rah. And I was just like, mate, I clicked on the photo and had a look at him. I'm like, mate, do you want me to come down to your coal mine and try and get you fired? Like,
Yeah.
like it was just unnecessarily cruel. Like, he doesn't see the person on the other side of the thing, but he attacked me. He attacked a skill that I've been working on for 30 years. He attacked Trish, a colleague of mine who's really dear to me, and she's, just banal stuff. So
people on Facebook are real people. You know, who they're talking to are real human beings, and people tend to forget that.
Yeah, and I think like this whole outrage thing, people are just going to simmer down. And the thing is, if everyone's racing to be outraged about something, God, we've gone into a deep conversation here. That you get exhausted. And I know myself, like I've actually started tuning out of a lot of stuff just to keep myself going with my own daily grind. Yeah. I'm more worried about keeping myself, my family and my loved ones taken care of, and just focus on what you can control, which is that. Yeah.
So and unfortunately it happens even in the phantom community as well, where you have Muppets that, like to try and be a bit of a hero. I guess
like
it happens everywhere.
Any names?
I'll tell you. Ready? Dan, start beeping.
Sorry.
Trying hard to alienate 5% of our audience.
One question I would love to be able to ask you is, what's your process? So when Frew or when Dudley gives you a cover, how does it? What's the process from start to finish? Obviously, it doesn't need to be as like just a general, or like, do you get a comic and then do you read it? How do you choose what you draw?
Generally, it starts with a phone call of me on the end of my bed crying, saying, "Hey, man, I need some work." No, I'm joking. It's generally I'm just I'm working away. I get an email from Dudley and I drop whatever I'm doing, because these are a lot of the stuff that I work on is quite structured. In terms of, it's got to look like this person, it's got to fit this brief, and it's almost controlled to an nth degree. Whereas, except for that, like generally speaking, I get an email with a PDF, a low-rate PDF of a terribly translated Scandinavian story, which has been done through Google Translate or something. Like the Phantom's not even called the Phantom; he's called the Spirit, the Ghost. He's called like multiple different things.
So just the
entity, and then I go through and read this poorly written version of the comic before you get your polished written version, and I have to make sense of the story, and then I go through and go, okay, that's some interesting imagery. I like this scene. This scene speaks to me. Like, for example, my very first cover, which I've got one here. Sorry. Fun bit of trivia. This is actually the unfinished artwork that was printed, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that.
For the slave.
So with this one here, I was going through this whole comic on a PDF, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of cool imagery. There's the skull head, phantom head peak. I didn't really find too much in the contemporary part of the story, because this is a Chronicle Chamber of Journey story. And this whole bit where this Phantom, who I'm not 100% sure which one he is, but he's got like the Captain America style cuffed boots, and it's not above the knee. So he's obviously he's somewhere after the third Phantom, I reckon. Anyway, so he is, if you can see it here, he's jumping out of a kayak, brawling with the swamp pirates who are trying to shake down the stone carving people, which were the famous sculpting tribe of the jungle.
So on page 10, for anyone who's jumped up and grabbed issue 1822, the stone carving people.
Reading along and came late. But yeah, so I was like, okay, how can I tackle that? And I was like, the most interesting part is when the Phantom launches out of the boat and hits him. And yeah, so then I try to draw the pirates as correctly as I could find the pirates in the comic, and then make them my own style, put in a stone carving person, and then just put in a sketch, sent that off to Glenn. Glenn came back with some notes about the positioning of the Phantom's arms and a few things like that, saying, you know, the foreshadowing was good, but it could be a little bit more improved. Rah, rah, rah. So I got all the line work up, and then I just went for it and submitted a grey, black and white version, and then sent that off to Glenn coloured, and he's like, great, love it. And yeah, and that's it. And it's pretty much the same. I actually, on my website, which is just Grange Wallis, Wallis is spelled WALLI for Ivan, S for Sam, .com, there's a portfolio page on my website, and the Phantom covers, the first two at least, are actually there, and it shows you my initial pencils, like a better description, because it's just drawn with my stylus on my screen here. But yeah, it shows you like the initial picture that I sent to the Frew crew, and then it shows how I built it up, because I paint black and white because it's very important to get, because of the way I do my lighting and structure my lighting. I've got to know where the whites have to be white, and the darks need to be dark, and then I color on top of that. And Copic markers, which I like using, can do this as well. You can actually grayscale the whole thing and then color over it, and I do the same thing digitally. So just put a few color layers on and bring all the light and stuff into it.
Yeah, right.
I hope that answered the question. It's a complicated process. I try to break it down as quickly as I could.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's just
that's really good, actually. That's
yeah. It's just interesting. Like, what I find interesting is, you know, you get the whole comic and then finding, you know, from the whole comic you're getting a cover and stuff like that. So it's just interesting, being a bit of an insight to the process.
I don't know how else they could do it. Like, obviously, I've come in late, but the way I'm sure that they've had processes with artists going, yeah, I can recreate this cover, but what am I doing here? Like, it's just, I don't know what happens in the story. Who's the girl? What's she related to the Phantom? So I think it's just easier. It's like, you go do your thing after you read the comic. Yeah. Then you know because at the end of the day, what I'm getting paid for, besides my drawing, is I've got to sell the issue. I've got to make it look exciting. I've got to make it look like something that people are dying to, you know, pick up and read. And like, that's the reason I'm a commercial artist. I actually spend time and energy on advertising my work. Yeah. To advertise whatever the product is. So yeah, I think being able to read the story is critical. It's crucial. Yeah. So I couldn't think of I don't think I could do this job if they just sent me like pictures of all the characters that were in the book and said, just make something exciting happen.
So I guess probably the most prolific Frew cover artist is Tommy Hughes. And when did he go from like the 50s through to the 80s or something like that? You know, and very few of those covers would have been story specific. They're all just sort of one-off pictures that I guess are a bit like the sketch covers in the sense of you could draw whatever you like, and then he turns them into, you know, Frew just picked them up and published them as covers. Would it be easier for you if that was the brief? Just, you know, draw us one of your sketch covers, draw a one-off Phantom sketch that you enjoy, and then they'll slap that on a cover.
No, not really. Because look, I'll be honest with you. So the last cover with the slaves, I struggled with that one because the story is actually more of a detective story. It's a very slow burn until the action scene at the end. And, you know, initially I had the idea of the Phantom running up to the blown out gate. So I even sketched that up, and I had a few things, and I'm like, I just can't get like the tension in this, you know, and like I was like struggling, and I was actually really busy at the time as well. And I was like, oh, you know, can you get this one done? And I'm like, yeah, I'll get it done really quickly. But then, so it was just this, like, how do I get this story to speak on the cover? And yeah, it was just a bit difficult for me, for mine, I reckon. Like, it was a challenging cover because, like, I wanted to do like a, you know, sort of like a half Phantom, half, you know, Kit Walker, because he's in the disguise, half the comic, you know, like play it up a little bit because I've drawn two Phantoms, you know, maybe I can put a Kit Walker in there. And I just was struggling with it. But because I had the issue, like, I wanted to tell the story on the cover. So that ends up being a panel, which I think is a sort of a panel that wasn't in the comic, that could have totally been slotted into the comic, of that tension-ridden moment before they go on flood, bomb the gates and try and liberate the slaves in there.
Yeah.
So, like, that's how I took the challenge. And I think that's better for the audience as well. Like, I used to hate comics as a kid, and this is me shooting myself in the foot in terms of what I'm doing as a career right now with fan and comics. So I used to hate it when the art didn't match the cover.
Yeah, right.
So my way around that now is obviously my art is quite different from what's in the comics, because they're developed from various different spots around the world with various different artists. So what I can do is control how exciting the issue should look.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like my covers hopefully can actually sort of whet the palate of people. Like I know that supernatural covers aren't supernatural Phantom Tales aren't for everybody, but the supernatural Guardians of the Galaxy cover, for lack of a better description, is like, I hope that gets people excited to read it, because it's a pretty exciting issue. Like, you got a woman about to be a sacrificial lamb, you got guys with like crazy horse animal heads, and you got the Phantom running through a cabin. He's trapped, and he's with Devil trying to find her. You've got a woman that's being raised out of a lair. You got a fire beast, and you got a hitman. Like, there's a lot going on in that story, and it's in 32 pages. So 36 pages. Sorry, I was like, there's a lot in this one. Read it. Yeah. Like, that's what I wanted it to be.
Well, and to be fair, I'm one of those people who don't like the supernatural stories a great deal, but I really like that cover, and whether it made me more excited to read the story or not, but I certainly love the cover. So
it did. It totally did.
So, sure. No, it actually did. Sorry, Grange just winked at me. If you're not listening if you're not watching the YouTube, you're right. It did. Okay, so philosophically, then, what's your thoughts on the old saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover"?
It's a little from column A, a little from column B. It's a bit of horseshit, because the fact is that a cover is by design. It's supposed to be eye-catching. I mean, as a human race, in terms of culture, we spend a lot of money on CD covers, LP covers, book covers, movie covers, for some terrible content, to be honest. And
there's
we
probably
buy
a
it.
joke in here about makeup or something, but
exactly. that's where I thought he was going to go, is makeup and bridal dresses,
fashion,
fashion and stuff like that. That's where I thought he was going to go.
Well, to be fair, there is a bit of a truth to the whole aspect of, like, I don't know, like, when you find somebody you're attracted to, whether they're, like, as a friend or as a romantic partner or anything like that, like, sometimes you don't necessarily find them attractive, or sometimes you find them too attractive physically, like, or you don't. But then when you meet them, they might have a terrible personality, and then their looks just take a nosedive. Or their personality is an absolute gold mine, and then they become 4 or 5 times more attractive. Like, I've experienced that in my life. So, but then you can meet people that are both.
Well, there's also a truism to the old saying that first impressions last as well. And so the first thing you observe when you pick up the book or the cover, and that appeals and can make the story more appealing as well.
Yeah, and that's basically the long way around explaining why I think I work hard to make my covers look good. I feel like if you're excited going in, you're going to be more excited by the story. Sorry, Jermaine, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's half the battle, is getting that kid or that person at the newsagent, because that's where most free comics are sold these days, to pick up the comic. If they pick up the comic to look at the cover, you've got the battle half won.
Yeah, exactly. If they double take, if they double take and then the hand touches the comic, that's a win.
You've won. They've basically brought it, and you've got a sale. And for fans like myself and Dan, we're going to buy it anyway, because it'll drive us crazy if we have an issue missing. But for a lot of the Frew buyers, it is the cover that attracts them, and you need to draw their attention to be able to pick up the comic.
Yeah, well, To be honest with you, the first issue, like that was my goal. Was I was like, I'm gonna rock their world with this cover, like because I knew, and I hope that this doesn't sound arrogant or anything, but I knew that my art style was quite different.
Yes.
I'm a bit more on the painterly side, and that always seems to like turn people's heads when it comes to comics, like not doing traditional inked work. So I was like, I'm gonna have some fun with this, and I remember like when it came out and all the feedback was just like, what the hell is this? This is completely different. This is unlike anything Frew's done before. And, you know, like I took that as a badge of honor. Like I know not everybody, it's not, my work can't be everybody's cup of tea just on the law of averages, but I wanted it to be a moment where people either took notice or they took notice again for the first time in a while.
Well, there certainly wasn't anyone looking at it going, oh, hang on, is this trying to go through it? Is this an Antonio Lemos? Is this a Glenn Ford? Is this a Jamie Jones? Is this a Jeremy? Everyone knew this is a new artist. This is this is the first, because you're right, it is completely different. And I don't think that's arrogant. I think that's absolutely true. They're saying it's better because it's different. It's just different. And some people will really enjoy that. Some people will be challenged by that. But the fact that you're now up to 4 published and more to come next year, I think Frew recognise and at the end of the day, they're business and they would only respond if the sales were good of the covers that you were producing. If those 4 covers all bought, you wouldn't be getting work next year. So the fact that you are still getting work says that the market is saying they're good too.
Yeah.
What it got in the top 5 from memory on the Chronicle Chamber poll.
Yeah, I feel like Andrew Walker when he took that mark over Carlisle. I was robbed. Didn't get mark of the year either.
Well, at least you got 2 more.
Sorry, I'm just joking. You
got to share it on Facebook and Instagram and get more people to vote for you.
Hey, I tried. Look, it wasn't a Trump style election campaign, and I didn't overly saturate the market with it. But it was more of a Bernie Sanders sort of renegade campaign. But I honestly think that the next cover, which I did a little preview, which comes out, I did on my Instagram and Facebook page. It's definitely my best cover to date.
So let's talk about that. I can't hold it up and show everybody, but Jermaine and I have seen, certainly the previews that you've put up on Facebook and Instagram, as you say. What is your Instagram handle? While we give you a plug?
It's just at Grange. I got in early, so it's just GRANGE. I get tagged in some of the most nefarious, weird stuff. I got tagged in a crystal market at Grange Park today. So that's over somewhere in the States, and I was like, please learn how to tag. Anyway,
and it's a great and again it's different. You've got a new slant on the ancestors of the Phantom.
So I was really excited by this one. So this cover, when I got the book, I was like, oh man, there's a lot going on in this, and I feel like Glenn and Dudley have sort of, I don't know if they're pigeonholing me for the supernatural stuff, which feels like I've got a grind up, because Dan's like, great cover, just don't like the content. But so I'm really excited about this one because it's the 3rd Phantom, and so going back to the workflow where I get a dodgy translation, I read that, and it's not like a Chronicle Chamber flashback. It's just, this is a third Phantom story as far as I'm aware.
Right.
Because I don't get the connecting issues. It's just hey, this is your issue, go for it. Yeah. So I only found out today that the super talented Jeremy McPherson did the first issue, and his art's just come out. So his issue is the one before mine.
Oh, right.
And the reason I know that is because he's drawn one of the characters I didn't draw.
This did arrive today.
Yeah. So that guy there on the zebra, he's sort of a henchman / mini villain of my issue.
Okay.
And obviously the Phantom changes his colour of cloak, because Jeremy and I didn't know to even discuss this. Mine's gone with a browny red hue and he's gone with a pale green. So
Yeah.
He blew his one got blown off in the desert, and he had to get a new one somewhere. That's just off scene. Don't need to worry about that. But yeah, so I'm really excited about this new cover because it's Third Phantom, and for people who don't know, the Third Phantom is the one in the 16th century who famously was trying to be in the Shakespearean play and got the role of Juliet, and then like his Phantom father forbade him from doing it. Is that where the story crumbles?
Yep.
Yeah, so I just like, okay, that's a pretty funny story. The Third Phantom's got a bit of a reputation as being a bit more dramatic and flamboyant. And I was like, okay, so 16th century, Third Phantom. I looked up a whole bunch of 16th century fashion, and I decided to extend the grill marks on like the Phantom's top up to about half forearm.
Around the
so they're a bit longer. I've made all of his jewelry more ornate. And added some flourishes. I put some seams in. I actually did draw a version of the cover without the glass eyes, and just more like a Billy Zane look. And then I decided, look, just keep it to what it looks like in the books. Like that's like I can't explain how he can have such a cool mask in the 16th century, but hell, it looks cool. Yeah. So I just went with it. And yeah, I'm really, really excited by it. Like I don't know what happened with that cover in the terms of, I just saw like there's two women in it. One's a villain, one's his wife. There's a mad castle. And I was thinking of like He-Man, and I was thinking of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And then, like there's slave children in it. And there's a desert. And I just went nuts. Like I actually went insane with it. Like I couldn't find a good picture of the castle. So I had to like draw it. From 3 different versions and sort of tie it all together, and hopefully I got a pretty good looking castle. And the other thing is the castle is in a lake of lava. So like that was fun to draw just on the sheer premise of it. So it was like Snake Mountain from He-Man, for anybody that follows He-Man. So I was just like, this is a dream. So I can't
hold it up, but I've got a Snake Mountain toy somewhere in a cupboard. Yeah, the play set.
Oh man, that's worth a pretty penny these days for the complete.
Is it?
Like hundreds.
My daughters just started watching He-Man and She-Ra and stuff like that. So it's all ringing true as well.
Man, whenever I see the intro to He-Man where he's like, and he talks about it all and explains the story, I can't help but smile and maybe like just like sort of rock in my chair with a little bit of like childlike enthusiasm. So I was pretty excited about this cover. I'm not even looking at it, but there's just a lot going on. Like I gave him the belt buckle's got a whole bunch of stuff. His ring's got a different thing. I gave him his gold crest.
You've bedazzled his ring.
I've bedazzled it. And I got in trouble with some Phantom collectors who shall not be named, saying the rings never changed. I'm like,
really?
Because I like, in my own interpretation of the Phantom, I'd like the idea of each Phantom's kit, pardon the pun, being immortalized in the Chronicle Chamber. Yeah. Sort of like the first Phantom, his sword and scabbard and his flintlock.
Yeah. That's all hanging
resting
somewhere
there with his belt. Yeah. And like I actually drew a sketch cover where all the Phantoms are like these mannequins, and it's got like their gun belts, and they'll change over time.
Like
the boots would get lower and stuff, and then that allows the Phantom to keep progressively changing, like Phantom 24's look and stuff.
We see that, like you're exactly right. The first Phantom had a flint gun. He would have had a scarab, and then as technology progressed, it's pretty stupid for the 21st Phantom to be carrying a flint gun and a scabbard, a sword as well. That just would not work.
Yeah. But I think you're more to that's weaponry. But the costume traditionally in all of the stories, and when I say traditionally, I think about Cy Barry, because that was certainly the era that Lee Falk, I think, did a lot of.
Cy Barry changed the costume.
Yeah, but there wasn't these the sort of costume changes that Grange is talking about. From generation to generation, they were very similar. Like the 7th Phantom, all of the Junkar stories is exactly the same dress and look as the 21st Phantom, other than weaponry.
No, he had the coat. There was the there was the coat that all the past Phantoms had. The boots.
The costume, the actual purple costume, and the look of the face and all the rest of it has never changed. the belt, the boots lengthened and that sort of thing. But that's
The belts
later. I'm
changed.
talking traditionally.
Yeah, so you're talking about the
Should I
long
just go and leave
johns,
you guys to
the long johns,
Sorry.
and you're talking about the long johns and the striped jocks have basically stayed the same in the cow.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
Where the accessories has changed to match the era.
Yeah, so I just like the idea is like there's so much beauty and tragedy to the story of the Phantom for mine. So no Phantom's ever met his grandfather.
Yeah.
How do you capture that sense of family, right? And for me, I'm like each Phantom. So there's 21 Phantom collections in the Chronicle Chamber, in my version, the way I see it in my head, where each Phantom gets his own sort of lot, and that's where his volumes go. But then that sense of reverence of you get to see, oh shit, the 21st Phantom, we got looking at Flintlock and the sword and going, how the hell did he do this? Because he's in the future with he's got his twin pistols, and he'll be like that sense of disconnect between how did he get this job done. Back in the days of dysentery and all this other stuff, and I've got all this new tech, and I just think that's, and it sort of evolves the character. It also deepens the character, and that's if I had my way of one day being able to sort of write a genesis of the Phantom sort of thing, it would be that sort of I love what Paul Mason's doing, and Paul Mason, I've never really met him before. I knew who he was for years, but we sat together at Supernova. He's the best person. I felt like it was an absolute treat to sit next to him. And sorry, somebody's checking in on me. But yeah, apparently it's bedtime. But so that's how I look at the Phantom. It's just Well, it should progress and it should change.
Yeah, and those subtle changes don't take away from the appearance of the man who cannot die, and it's always the same man because it's generations of people who are seeing him as well. And the basic description is still going to be the same. People are still going to basically, the memory is going to be, oh, that's right, it was the guy in purple and all the rest of it. And the mask.
It's a reputation that precedes him most of the time.
That's right. And you certainly, from what I've seen of the cover, haven't stepped so far away that the people are going to go, hang on, that looks nothing like the Phantom. It's still clearly the Phantom, but you've just placed him in history appropriately, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit of fun. Lee Falk is famous for really researching his stories and making sure that they were as accurate to the time.
Yeah.
So for me, changing the fabrics of the suit and adding some flourishes to sort of ground that reality is something that I want to do as well in my version of the Phantom.
Yeah.
Because that's me trying to pay respect to Lee Falk. So, if he's going to research the stories to make them as authentic as possible, well, I'm damn well going to be researching the visuals of the period to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So talking about what you said about the Phantom having their costumes and their belongings in the Skull Cave, there is actually precedence for that in, I think it's Diana and the Bank Robbers, which is an old Wilson McCoy story. There's actually a scene, and there's been in a couple of others as well, where Diana's actually thumbing through all the old costumes of past Phantoms, and that's where she finds the Julie Walker Phantom costume. So, there is precedence of, it sounds like Dan's going to the toilet.
I was planning on not saying anything, but yeah.
Oh, he's filling up water.
No, he's getting the cards out.
But yeah, so there is precedence of past belongings of the Phantoms. That, and I remember back in the 80s and 90s that there were stories where the Phantom was saying, "Oh, I've been going through Phantom X's belongings and I've found this," and then they used that as a segue to get into the story and stuff.
Well, I sort of took it out of the Billy Zane movie, really. So because how he got his dad's belt back from the guy Drax. No, not Drax. Drax is the main villain. The other guy. who he has a battle with at the start of the
Quill.
movie on the bridge.
Quill.
Yeah, so he gets the belt back, and then he puts it on a mantle, and I was like, "See, I
Yes.
like that." And also the whole like Batman Batcave thing where he's got like all the previous Robins costumes, some of his old costumes next to the dinosaur and the coin. I like the idea of it being this evolving sort of lair type thing that, you know, because the whole thing about the Phantom is history, and you know, how would you not have a museum dedicated to your family's exploits if you're not going to inspire the next generation? So that's why I as well.
So
the thing just want to go back to the way you've depicted the third Phantom, and I've told you this as well privately, but the thing that I love about that cover is that you've individualized that Phantom. He's not just a Phantom X, you know, he's got personality, he's got character. He's not just a guy in a mask. He is the third Phantom. And I feel sometimes when people depict Phantoms, it's the same Phantom just in a different era. But that's what I like about that cover, is that you've given him personality and character.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. I think there was Jason Paulos did a cover that I was like jealous of because it was the whole Jack the Ripper story. I think that was his cover. I could be wrong. It might have been Shane Foley. I've mucked up some of their covers before. Their styles are slightly different, but there's just something about the way they've both got an expressiveness to their art. And it was the fact that I think was also a third Phantom story, and he had the high boots and he had the cape with the cloak going on, and I was like, oh, this is my turn, you know, like I get to do something with the third Phantom.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's rip a rabbit out of the hat here and have a red hot go. And like I was looking at, like I was actually thinking about like giving him a bit of a puffier costume, like in the 16th century it was like back in the day of like King Henry VIII, and you know, like the big puffy
shoulder
pads and stuff like that. And I was thinking about giving him like a quilted looking costume, and I was like, okay, don't reinvent it, don't get yourself shot in the foot, don't
go too far.
Yeah, you're on your fourth cover here, mate. It's not cover 200. So what I thought was, you know, some of the reference that I looked up is they've got like those highly knitted like frills. So I frilled up the cuffs, and I was like, okay, that's good enough. And then I put two seams on either side of the cowl around the mask, and I was like, that's good enough stuff. And then I just put I designed my own skull brooch, which has the skull, but then it has the mark of the good on the forehead. On that brooch, and now that's something I've actually incorporated in a few other drawings that I've done here, there, and everywhere, including a couple of sketch covers. And I think that's like my signature thing that I'm going to do. Because,
cool. Yeah. So can we talk about the sketch covers for a little bit then? And I wish I had one, and there was one I particularly liked, and I just couldn't stretch the budget, and I wish I had at the time. But the sketch covers you brought, I don't know, like 10 to a dozen up to Supanova.
Yeah, about that.
And each of them, what I really liked about looking through your sketch covers is that each of them tells a story, even though they're not based on a story, that it's just come out of your head. And I think anyone listening to this podcast will be able to hear in the way that you explain your process how deep you get into the story and try to express all of that. And every element is so thought through and crafted to tell part of that story. And that certainly came through in the sketch covers that you produced as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, about just bringing something to life from your own imaginings? You mentioned the No Phantoms Met His Grandfather. That inspired one of the covers.
Yeah, so I'm just, because I've got my computer in front of me, and I've decided I'll just bring up a couple just for my own, just to reflect, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because I do, like with all the ones that I took up to Supanova, I ended up doing high quality scans of them. Just my wife said, if you don't scan every one of those perfectly, and I said, I've taken really good photos of my iPhone. She's like, that's not good enough. Like I want you to, you know, and I'm like, oh God.
And talking to you in the lead up to that, you loved them. You know, they were all fantastic. You were reluctant. You're a reluctant salesman.
Well, you know what? I think it's because I've worked in sales once or twice in my, you know, at the start of my life. in the working world, and I didn't like selling to people if I didn't like something. So like, selling phone contracts or selling, crap really. So I think that's just something that's in me. Like, I don't want to really take money for the sake of taking money to line my pockets. Like, I'm not saying I'm a good Samaritan and I'll work for free, but like, I've done little things for like, for people here and there. They just like help them on their way because it's cost me nothing. And I get to use my experience to sort of help people out with something quickly. Yeah. But then with these covers, I was like, okay, well, if you're going to be there selling your wares to people, give them something worth your while. And they were expensive. I'm not going to lie. Like, I know that I'm an expensive artist and I might price myself out with some people, but I wanted to give everybody that bought my covers something that was intrinsically unique. I didn't want them to feel like, oh, I've seen you draw like 5 sketch covers like this. I just think that you're devaluing the audience for that.
Yep.
So every sketch cover I did, I was like, what's a cool thing that I want to see the Phantom doing? So like, I drew one which was like the Phantom is Mad Max sort of on a bike in, like a desert sort of scenario set in the future, which was directly inspired from Batman Year Zero, which was like this story that came out last year and had Batman with a crossbow over his back and riding on a motorbike in the jungle. And I was like, well, that works. Just make it your own. Yeah. So I did that. And then I drew like even some little one-off comic book panels. Like, I'm looking at one now where it's one like a young Phantom holding a older Phantom who's died. And I even put a caption in there, which was really stressful because I knew I'm terrible at writing, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast. I might be selling myself short, but I wrote, like, I put a typo in one of them, surely. And then I was just like, oh God, I'm so stressed at writing this out. And like, I was trying to get it to fit into this little box that I made and like trying to get the right amount of words for the right amount of space. And, I wanted whoever bought these to go, hey, this is mine. This speaks to me. This is uniquely mine. And I was just sort of kind of proud of the way they turned out. And it was also a bit of a nice process to reconnect with drawing traditionally. There's light years in terms of difference between what it feels like to draw digitally or traditionally, but it was just nice. I bought a whole bunch of Cobics and I was just wanting to play with them and have a bit of an experiment. And it just was this little 2-week process before I went up to Sydney. Yeah. Gave me the chance to really dig deep into Phantom lore and just have a red hot go. I remember messaging you guys and saying, hey, can I do this? Yeah. Am I allowed this? Like, does this idea work?
Yep.
Message Trevor Clark and he's like, no, you can't change the Phantom rings. And I'm like, you're not going to love my 4th cover then. But yeah, so.
For me, of the sketch covers, the one that you were talking about of the Phantom, the young Phantom putting away his father who passed away, it reminds me of the Paul Ryan one, and that one was one of my favourite covers. And then the other one was the Phantom 2040. They were probably my 2 favourite of the covers that I saw of yours.
The funny thing is, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you guys go, hey, we've got exclusive access to your Patreon to watch Series 2. And I was like, hey, I haven't seen Series 1. So I Googled it. And, Series 1 is like basically this big movie on YouTube that you can watch. And I was watching it, I'm like, hey, this show's pretty good. Like, it's not like, if anything, like the writers were on point in terms of like the way technology in the world was going. And then I was like, oh, now I've got to draw this. And I was listening to your podcast, and then I was like, I'd finished up one, and I think from memory it's the one I'm looking at now, which is the one I discussed before, where the Phantom's gotten dressed as the Phantom for the first time, and then there's a room full of the old Phantom's costumes on mannequins, and he's taking it over for the first time. And then I finished that one, and I was like, oh, I've got to do 2040. And that's where I wanted to challenge myself with that. And then ended up being sold to Alan and his daughter, and I think they both love the colours and the lighting.
So there's a real neon effect to that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love techno sort of. Like I watched Blade Runner 2049 and Blade Runner 1 just this week for the 77th time. I think just like that aesthetic just really Gets me going.
Yeah.
So the guys who, just for your information, the guys who created 2040, they were the ones that did the TV series Neon Flux
Neon
or
Flux or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember them all at the same time. It was a French company.
Yeah.
And then didn't Charlize Theron do a movie of their character?
Yeah, but yeah, wasn't very
That
good.
well remembered movie.
Flop.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, but look, some people put their heart and souls in that for a few months. So
Yeah. Oh, the Phantom 20s. I really enjoy it. My daughter does prefer Defenders of the Earth, but I enjoy both of them.
you have to get past the aesthetic. Like
Yeah.
for mine, like I remember not liking it as a kid, and I'd watched an episode here, there, and everywhere when it used to be on late night at SBS after the Max and Neon Flux or whatever it was called. And I'm like, oh, it's Phantom. And I'm like, oh, it's not the Phantom. It's just like, and Defenders of the Earth, like you go and watch it now, and it's like he's the 23rd Phantom or something, and he's got superpowers.
Yeah.
He's got no gun, and he's just like calls on like 10 different animals like power, and just like he's strength of 10 bears or something. And it's just like I don't mind that. I actually don't mind it, like in terms of a futuristic Phantom having superpowers from some sort of scientific thing, and they do that with 2040. But I just. Like when I was watching the cartoon, I'm like, this is too good not to draw in my own style. And I made the Phantom a bit skinnier and way more ripped, like he was in that, and just went to town and great.
So another piece of useless another piece of useless information for you is Nets. So the following Monday is actually the anniversary when the first Defence of the Earth TV episode aired.
Well, for other people that were needing some extra useful information, there was one episode of the Phantom, Defenders of the Earth I remembered, and I was Googling the other day, and Amazon Prime, which is available here in Australia as a Netflix type thing, they've got the whole series on there for like $6 a month, and I think you can get your first month free, so you can just go and smash it there. And my favorite episode is the one where it's the Phantom and he's got these two sons doing, the feats of challenge to see who's a Phantom.
Oh, yeah,
and then the older son ends up being a baddie and the weather wizard or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
But like the actual story of them battling out to be the man of the Phantom, it's very memorable stuff.
That was actually done as a comic book series as well, in the comic books as well. Dan, you got any other questions, mate?
Oh, dozens, mate, dozens. I can't. We need to mention this one. The
trading card.
Your trading card in the Gallery Series 2 set.
Don't worry about the glare. That's just what I drew in there.
Yeah.
It moves with.
It's a hologram.
With the eye.
This one.
But that there's the artwork that I did in the Oz Comics thing that we were talking earlier.
Oh, is that right?
And,
there you go.
Glenn said, "Hey, that artwork's great. Can we use it?" And I was like, "Yeah, go for it."
So this is literally the first published Phantom that you've done. I guess in terms of age of drawing.
Yes, it's my first professional Phantom drawing. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's 95. I've got a couple of them myself floating around the office somewhere.
Yeah, so that's pretty. Not that you're probably too. You've got dozens and dozens of trading cards, I suppose, but to have a Phantom one out, how's that add to the resume?
No, it's a real treat. Because like trading cards growing up, they were huge.
Yeah,
and there's like kids generally went for the sports ones, but every now and then someone bring in like I collected the Death and Return of the Superman card line when I was a kid, and I collected the original Phantom cards as a kid as well. I've still got them up in my attic, at my parents' place. So. My attic at my parents' place. That's a weird way to put it. But if you go up in there, all you'll see is toy boxes and old drawings. It's basically my attic.
Just awesome stuff.
I think my dad might have a golf club up there. That's it. And some of my sisters and brothers' homework. But it's just like I remember collecting the Phantom ones as a kid, and they had those great ones that which they've redone in the series where like you put them all together and they make a bigger artwork. So to be a part of that legacy in any form is great. Like I was listening to the radio today. I listened to SEN here down in Melbourne, which is a sports radio station. And, you know, people call up all the time going, oh, do you remember that great trading kit of, you know, this guy or, you know, this player back in the day? And, you know, like trading cards mean things to people. People remember them. It's just as sad they don't come with a piece of gum anymore.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe I've ruined this one because I actually got you to sign it for me down at Supanova, which apparently devalues it horribly. Is that correct?
Well, so this is something I can't answer because with the footy cards, if an athlete signs them or even the artist signs them, it devalues them because the whole thing with sports cards is they've got to be in mint condition and immaculate. Yeah. Whereas with an artist series of cards, if they're signed by the artists, like I don't even know if this is right or not, it probably increases the value.
It does.
So I think it depends on what the card is in terms of its audience.
Yeah, for sure. But this card without your signature, what would it be worth, Jerm? Less $1? Yeah, less than $1.
50 cents to $1.
With the signature, it could be with the signature, mate. It could be worth anything as much as $1.50. So,
$1.29.
Oh man.
No, it's
starting to be worth less than the envelope and the stamp that it goes in.
No, in terms of enough that the next Patreon giveaway that we do for summer, Jerm, is going to be a bunch of the trading cards signed by various artists from Australia and around the world, because they're things that people can't get, you know, unless they are able to go to Supanova. You know, if you were able to go to Supanova in Sydney, you would have got 6-7 cards signed. And it's just unique to have the card actually touched by the artist and the signature on there. So people
that's true.
Chase that in this realm anyway.
Yeah. Well, look, in terms of answering your quick question seriously, like I'm just absolutely sure. Like when Glenn asked me, I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. I don't even think I'm invoiced him for it, but but I don't really care.
Glenn's just gone la 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 la. You do that?
No, that's fine. It doesn't really bother me. I mean, Glenn's been so generous with you know, sending me batches of cards. You know, he sent me posters, and they always give me a few comics every time. You know, I do the signature series ones and stuff. Like the way I look at it with me and my work, or my work and I. Is that it's like when you over-service any client in any job, or when you do something with anybody, like, you know, if you can go above and beyond here, there and everywhere, you know, hopefully people take notice of that, and you get rewarded by having a longer career with these people. So I don't really see me doing an artwork for you know, which I ended up using to promote me, which has ended up giving me 4 covers and then a few more, and
exactly
gave me access to the fan and people and stuff like that. Like that artwork paid for itself. It doesn't need to be
20 times
me again and stuff like that. So, like, it was an experiment that paid off, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. You know, like, you know, I saw Jamie doing his work, and I was like, okay, well, why can't I be doing that? Like, he's obviously not doing every color. Like, the covers are changing. I was like, I could put myself in the roster like any other employee in any other job. And, you know, it's just been a good experience. And, you know, I love working in sport, but it's a very controlled industry. Like, the fan is controlled, and, you know, it's got to hit the right marks, but it's different. Like, I get to be creative in the way that I was creative as a kid again. So, you know, like, I can bring my imagination out to play, and, you know, like, there's no hard and fast rules in terms of 100% likeness accuracy every time. So, it's just been a joy. I think I just rambled then, but thanks for listening. But yeah, it's just good fun. It's just like, I've said this to Dudley and Glenn, and hopefully none of my other clients really listen to this, but sometimes, no matter how busy I am, if I get a cover come through, I've like literally just dropped what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm just going to work on this for like an hour. And then all of a sudden I've finished it. And I'm like, oh God, I finished it. And I didn't even get it approved by them. You know, luckily it's gone through, but it's just there's a lot of fun drawing the fandom. There's a lot of fun working with Glenn and Dudley, and
that's what comics should be.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But goddamn, there's a lot of people that go nuts about it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's fair enough to have passion and stuff like that, and to be, get upset when stuff doesn't go the way you want it and all that. But at the end of the day, comics are fun. With a PH, of course.
Yeah, of course, with PH.
Yeah.
How else would you spell it? But it's like with Jeff Weigel. Remember Jeff Weigel's great, extraordinarily candid speech at the Lee Falk Memorial dinner? Like,
yes.
I actually, I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but I teed up on that. He's talking about the hardships that he's had trying to get into the industry. His wife having to support him with, situational changes after the GFC and a few things like that. And I know I mentioned it earlier regarding my own health problems a couple of years ago, but that really knocked me down, and it took me a long time to build myself back up physically and mentally, and to get the gumption to, like, I was ready to throw drawing away and just getting a job and just like living that 9-to-5 existence, and buying a house, having kids, and then hopefully not regretting anything. But then the fire reawoke in me, and one job here, another job there, and I fell back in love with my work. And Glenn and Jeff's story really hit me, and I actually got a little bit emotional listening to it. But the thing that he finished on was this great story about Green Lantern being turned into Parallax in the 90s, and how like Green Lantern was his favorite comic book character, and it's really aggravated that DC had the gumption to take down one of their biggest heroes and turn him into a massive, mass murdering ultra villain. And then he made a promise to all of us phantom fans with a PH that as long as I'm one of the wardens at the gate of the thing that you love, I'm never going to muck around with your guy. And I too would like to make that promise as well one day. Publicly, maybe if I could have access to a podcast or some sort of video interview or something, I'll be able to do it. But yeah, so it's just, these things are important to people, and you've got to treat them with respect. Like, sure, I might, tickle my own fancy and give the Phantom a
bedazzled ring,
and add some flourishes. But like, that's my goddamn thing, right, as an artist. But at the same time, I don't want to be canon breaking. I don't want to rip anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to like be an angry child in a stage play that just rips down the scenery. I just, it's just a little bit of joy for me. Hopefully you guys can respect it. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely agree.
That would be a lovely note to end on if I didn't have to say a massive thank you for one thing. And that's obviously, I can't believe it's taken us this long to mention it, but Grange, you're responsible for the new artwork that we have for Chronicle Chamber, the logo that we've got for the podcast. And we now use it to the point where I worry that we are saturating our homepage with it because we just love it so much. Really appreciate the work that you did for that. It turned out magnificently, and it's been a wonderful rebrand for us.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. I've still got to give you guys that card of the original. My little sketches. I had a little.
Oh,
thing.
That's right. Yeah, because you showed us a bunch of the concept sketches and looked like they'd been drawn in biro. To be honest,
They were. I used to love drawing in biro because when I used to work at in the call centers back when I was like in my early 20s, I used to just sketch on like post-it notes. I've actually got a little volume of post-it note sketches. But yeah, it was a pleasure doing it for you guys. I remember seeing your stuff here, there, and everywhere. And I was looking at, and you had a few different artworks and pictures that you've obviously thrown together from different areas from how long Chronicle Chambers has been going.
Yeah.
And I was like, like when I approached you guys about potentially doing it, and you guys were happy to put it in motion, that I thought, bring the branding together, just, tighten it up a little bit, and have that one unique look. And it was just something I've been thinking of ever since I saw your podcast come up on my feed, and then when I started listening to it, I was just like, one day hopefully I can help these guys and work with these guys and collaborate with them to create something that's uniquely theirs.
Yeah.
And you know, it's away from every other Phantom. Like, I don't think it looks terribly like it's my artwork, but there's something about that Phantom. I don't necessarily think he looks like too many. He looks like all Phantoms, but then no Phantoms.
Yeah.
So then he becomes your Phantom.
Yeah.
So that was something I honestly considered. But it was a pleasure working with you guys, and it was based off the original Monkeys Melbourne design, but then I've sort of sharpened it up and make it look realistic.
Yeah. So that was Joe Douglas, obviously, who founded the site. That was his photo and image, probably just from his collection or whatever was on his desk at the time, and it was iconic for us for a long time. But for you to actually adapt it, you know, Phantom with those the headphones over the top, I just really love it. And Germ, you may be able to qualify this a little bit, but I think there's a bit of Don Newton about it actually. When I look at that image, I feel there's a hint of Don Newton.
Yeah. There's this famous Don Newton panel where he's got it's the same, it's the front on, and he's got the same look. And it was probably one of my most favourite Don Newton panels.
And I've never said that to you before, Grange, because I've never really thought about it before. But sitting here thinking about that panel, I think, well, yeah, the image you created for us. There's certainly you talk about it being a classic. It is. It's not over the top. It's perfect for us. Is what I'm getting at.
It's always good to get good feedback.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we've had a lot of good feedback from our viewers and supporters and stuff like that as well.
Great. So. Well, I'm glad that we could all come together on it because, I listened. Like I remember after you launched it, I was listening to one of the podcasts thereafter, and you guys thanked me for it, and I was like, felt a little bit chuffed. So cool. it was a pleasure. And you know, you guys are spending your time. I know that you guys don't make terribly like it's not like it's a sustainable outside of being maybe a self-sustainable endeavor to bring as much Phantom news.
Basically, basically the Patreon pays the bills, but it doesn't.
Self-sustaining is the perfect term.
But to clarify your point, Jermaine, I'm assuming you mean the Chronicle Chambers bills, not your personal gas and water and internet. I'm sure they're out of your own budget.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, so the Patreon supporters pay for like the domain names, you know, the domain name costing, the hosting, the G Drive, which hosts all of the the P3 and then you know, Buzzsprout costs, you know, we've got all the podcast hosting and stuff like that. So Patreon pays those. But
I spend about like $50 a month on my website, my Dropbox, so I can give my work off to my clients. You know, the internet, all those things. Like I can basically almost claim 100% of my internet fee just because of like with the tax man, because all it's doing is uploading stuff and you know supporting my website and all that sort of stuff. It's expensive to be online.
And as we have got a couple of extra Patreon supporters on board, and we'll go through these guys after the outro, I suppose. But it's been able to let us do cooler stuff with the website, like this video. We haven't been able to have this reliable video to put up on YouTube before, and we wish we had of. You know, back when we were, what is it? Pre-50s when we were interviewing Cy Barry, or 53, something like that, was the first podcast we interviewed Cy Barry.
That would have been great.
This video for him as well. But, thanks to Patreon supporters coming on board, we're able to do this sort of thing now. So, self-sustaining and hopefully improving the overall product of the website and podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing. Like you see people developing content on the internet, and like they're asking for help and support because these things do take time. Like like when I'm doing, like people sometimes like shout request me, like going, draw this picture of this or blah 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 blah. And it's just like, sure, but I'll just be doing it with my own private time, and I can't sell it because it's it's a trademarked character, or it's an athlete's likeness, or it's got logos on it that I can't really portray. And it's just like, I'll be just doing it for you to have as your iPhone wallpaper. But then that's like 6 or 7 hours of my life, and there's no guarantee you're going to like it.
Yeah.
So, it's a risk, and we just hope that everyone enjoys the content that we make, and that's about it.
Definitely. So
All right.
on that note, Dan, how could people support us on Patreon?
Well, we'll go through we'll go through that in a minute. I think we need Grange before we wrap up. I think we need to give you. You've mentioned a couple of your ways people can get in contact with you or see your work on Instagram and all the rest of it. Have you got a range of ways for people to get in touch with you if they want to commission a sketch cover or get in touch with you about any of your fan work or see your artwork in general?
Look, I'm always available online at my own detriment in terms of my professional output. But, the rabbit hole starts at grangewallis.com. There's links to all my social pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that, from my page, as well as just being able to go to my portfolio and have a look. In terms of covers, sketch covers, I've got 4 sketch covers that I haven't finished yet. So I'm already building up a bad reputation with myself about not getting them out there quickly enough. Mind you, one customer sent me 3, so like he did load me up.
Is he?
Thanks, Will.
Is he? Oh, I was going to say I thought he might be part of this podcast.
No.
Jermaine's shaking his head.
No.
I've got an idea for you to do a sketch cover for me, though.
Yeah, you're going to have to wait until after the grand final.
Yeah.
I'll feed my family with that idea.
Yeah. So
that was a joke. There's actually no pressure.
Yeah.
If people want to commission a cover with me, I'm happy to do it. But Paul Mason and I have discussed this whole sort of scenario of like, you want to do it, but then you're nervous about like charging and putting it all about. Like, it's weird because I've been a professional artist for ages. When it comes to a company, I'm like, that's my fee.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it because that's a company of people paying.
Yeah.
And Commonwealth within that company. But when it comes to private collectors and stuff, like, I understand what it's like to balance, the proverbial checkbook. So like, there's no pressure, and like, I don't want everybody to feel like if you're going to talk to me, I'm going to be like, why haven't you bought anything yet? So like, that's not my jam. But having said that, though, I'm always happy to take a commission. But just up to you guys if you want to do it, and that's it. No pressure. I'm hopefully going to be here for a long time, and I could be doing this when I'm 90 in Cy Barry, just pumping out commissions and get my son to put it in the post from New York City.
on whatever social media platform is available at that stage.
Oh man. Oh God, I'd hate to see what the internet will be like in the future.
Oh, God only knows.
It'll probably be
hopefully we've calmed down a little bit and we're not as outraged.
I don't think that 40-year-old Cy Barry would have had any idea how he was going to be selling his artwork when he was a 90-year-old.
Man, his line work is still tight. I don't know how he's doing it.
Yeah. All right. Well, mate, thank you very much. Is there anything else? It's been again, we always say it's going to be an hour or so. And an hour
it's been
so.
2.
Yeah, it always is. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to bring up?
It's not our fault. It's not our fault.
Hey, I didn't stop you. I'm just as equally to blame. Anything's no, not really. No, I'm just here, just drawing pictures for a living. Hopefully I'll see you all in Sydney. I have a stack of comics that was sent to me the other day, which may or may not be the originals of the covers that I've got to recreate. So
the Ibis mystery.
Yeah, so I can't see. I don't know if you can see the covers from the way I'm holding it here, but that's them. Oh, that's the back covers. Oh, well, we'll see.
Yeah, I know exactly what it is just by the back covers.
By the back covers.
Yeah, that will be real art. It won't be advertising.
Yeah, I might have.
That's all real art. That's all great art, actually.
Do I need to bleep that out, Grange?
Yeah, bleep it out.
You know what? They've officially given me the job. Let's see what happens.
Bleep it out.
I'll get to keep those comics at least.
Bleep it out just to annoy the listeners.
I will do that.
All right. It's been printed in over 20 years, apparently.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that is the rule of thumb that they go by, and I like it. So, yeah.
And that's where I'm going to stick it at.
All right.
It's a good
I
story.
thought that was a bit of fun, just showing the back covers, because the only who's probably be able to get that, David Buddy, who I like to call the Buddy. He he'll probably go back through his scans. I went over to his house once and he showed me his whole collection. He's like, make sure you bring a thumb drive. I brought a thumb drive and it came back with all the Frew covers on it. So I've got a treasure trove of scan covers that he's all done by himself. So thank you, David.
That's fantastic.
So he might be smart enough to be able to get through all those covers and figure them out.
Well, if nothing else, if people have been sitting here in the car or on the commute into work, whatever, listening to us on the podcast, the traditional form, if nothing else, surely that's a little bit of sugar to go and have a look at the YouTube at around the 2 hour mark, just to check those back covers. We'll double our YouTube hits thanks to that. Thanks, mate.
Well, I've got to say, you guys always say it's going to be an hour, and it's not. Look, I'll be honest with you. Like if you guys run a pirate ship, the Phantom would attack you because you don't run a tight ship. Because I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I've been listening to this for 2 hours. Like it's not like I'm not having fun, and I've listened to the whole thing, but I'm like, golly, I've done a complete artwork in this time.
Well, hopefully you're sitting there going, where did the time go? Time flies when you're having fun.
It's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's just these artists, creators, just keep talking.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Well,
we don't talk to anybody else. Like I've been dying for conversation all day. My wife's just flown out to UK for a week for work, so I'm like,
no, it's all. People like it. People like listening to creators and learning their process and learning how they do things and what makes them tick and stuff. And so I think for stuff like that, people are a little bit more forgiving for longer podcasts.
Very good. Well, hopefully the messiness of my office hasn't put anyone off, but I'm in the transitional stage of my life where I'm moving into a new house and half of my stuff is in storage. It's crazy.
Is the reason why you got the blinds down behind you or the blanket over the window so that way we don't see like the sun going down at the start of the podcast and then the sun going back up at the end of the podcast?
I honestly don't know how to answer that. That blind, that makeshift blind, is just there to cover the glare that hits my sunscreen. It hits my screen at 3:00 in the afternoon. So my back's facing due west. Wait, rises in the east, sits in the west. Yeah, so yeah, due west is at my back. So yeah, in the afternoons it gets a bit glary.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, mate, we might wrap it up.
We definitely dried out the conversation. We've been talking about blinds and sunsets. So
I'm going to back it up a little bit in the editing process, or I won't. Whatever. Thanks very much, mate. I really appreciate your time tonight. It has been a deep dive, and I've been looking forward to it since we chatted in the lead up to Supanova. I really enjoyed the conversation and meeting you on the Friday night. In particular, while we're waiting for Bradley and Joyful to finally turn up back at the Mercure. It's been fantastic meeting you and finding out more about your history with the Phantom and your process and stuff in particular. Really appreciate your time tonight. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving myself and other artists like me a platform to discuss things with the community. Bring a bit of insight into our work, whether or not we're doing it the right way or the wrong way. And, I don't think that there's any of the artists that I've met that take this as a lightly given opportunity. So being able to talk with the audience, directly or indirectly in this kind of format, it's a treat because I'd never write a blog post 2.5 hours long. So, if it's an entertaining conversation, I hope everyone's enjoyed what I've had to say and my feelings on the Phantom. I hope everyone's really excited about the new cover. I'm really excited about it. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but I think it's some of the best I've ever done on a professional capacity or a private capacity. And I'm really, really proud of it. And I just hope, the next genesis of my cover work moving forward is just as good. And I hope you all get around it. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Right, Jim. So Grange Wallis hasn't got a huge body of work that we've heard from other artists that we've spoken to and that sort of thing with the 4. But a substantial cover of work nonetheless. The 4 covers now, covers coming out next year, the trading card we talked about, and one of the most important things being obviously Chronicle Chamber branding. I really enjoyed talking to Grange. That was fantastic.
Yeah, he's a top bloke. He's easy to talk to. He's easy to get along with, and probably easy to drink with as well. But no, it was. I enjoy talking to the different artists and different creators and stuff, learning about how they think, how they process, how they do the things that we dissect and we have fun with.
And he was as open as anyone we've ever talked to, I think, in terms of his process and taking us from A through to Z and B, C, D, and all the rest of them in between. And I'm not saying that in any sort of a negative way, Grange. I don't think that I'm saying you've overspoken about it or anything. I loved hearing about every step of the process and, how he really thinks about every single image that he draws.
And it just goes to show, and he even said at the end of the conversation, I think you might have recorded that, I can't remember, but he said about everyone that is taught to has that endearment, that care for the character, and that they're, like what he said with, he echoed what Jeff said in his speech at the dinner, he's here to make the character better, make, not to ruin our hero, but to, add years to the hero's life and
really build on it with his own take. And I do like the idea, and I guess I'd never really thought it through too much about the costume changes and the gradual progression of that, and he really placing a particular fandom in that time frame
period,
so you could tell at a glance which fandom that was. That individualistic nature of the character, or of that character within the legacy, I guess, of the hero.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting because on Facebook today there was actually someone who wasn't part of that private conversation that we had, but he picked up on it straight away that this is the third fandom, and the third fandom was in the drama club, I guess you could call it. So he's got that natural.
He's in the Globe Theatre with William Shakespeare. I mean, it's a little bit more than drama club.
But, he will have that natural flair, and that's what he's portrayed in the image of the third Phantom. So, there was a Phantom that picked up on what Grange was trying to do, and I think that's important because it helps give credibility with what he's done as well, and that there is fans out there that will appreciate it. There are going to be the odd one like Trevor that's going to get a bit upset about the bedazzled ring, but he is a Collingwood supporter, so
and hello Trevor if you're listening. Anyway, look, really appreciate the time of Grange tonight. We do have lots to talk about in the fandom world, and we hope to produce. Hopefully, we've actually released the Comics and News podcast by the time this one comes out. That's in the plans. But with Stephen overseas and term 3 coming to a conclusion, term 3 being a massively busy term, football season's coming to a conclusion, and both of us still in the finals. There's lots going on in our non-Phantom lives at the moment. So really appreciate the support of people, whether that's by giving us some sort of financial contribution through the Patreon, and we talked about in the podcast about how that can certainly help what we do, or even just the comments that we receive from time to time on Facebook or Messenger or any of the social platforms to engage with the content that we're putting up, or to just flick us a thanks or whatever for a conversation that they've enjoyed. It really is. It means a lot. It can't undersell.
Feeds our ego.
Yeah, ego. It's nourishment for the soul is a Chris Fagan quote that I really love, and it certainly does that for me anyway. So thank you very much to anyone who's given us a shout out or some support in whatever way it is. Patreon is obviously one of the ways that you can show that financially with dollars, as we've spoken about, and we really appreciate all of those. Hope you enjoyed the giveaway that happened at the start of spring. Jermaine filmed that with his gorgeous daughter Abigail, drawing the name of the winner out of the hat. Remind me who that was again, Jer? Callum Markin, and thank you very much, Callum, for all of your support, and congratulations on winning the Hermes Press book that was the prize there. And thank you especially for living close to Jermaine, so we don't have to pay for postage to get that to you. Well done.
I think that was like, Callum, yes, don't have to post it. And then even the better thing is when I give it to him, I can basically get a photo of him as well, and I have to rely on them to give us a photo later on.
Absolutely. Look, the link to Patreon is at the top of our homepage, chroniclechamber.com. We hope that you're checking that out regularly. I would love to be putting more content up there on a regular basis, but as I say, Term 3 has been insane, and so I'm not writing as much for the website as I would have hoped, and I hope to pick that up a bit over the September holidays and into Term 4. The other benefit, of course, of being on Patreon as a $5 a month contributor is that you have access to the Fan and Preservation Project, which, again, Grange talked about during the podcast there, and when we drew more out of him, I suppose, in terms of things that you can access there. And Phantom 2040, the second season, is certainly one of the highlights of the P3. Have you got a particular favourite part of the P3 thing, something that you're quite proud that we've been able to preserve, hold on to, and store for people to look at, Jerm?
Probably season 2 of 2040, but also the Friends of the Phantom newsletter, like Pete, who's helped us with a lot. He didn't even have all of the ones.
Pete Klaus,
Pete Klaus, who helped create them. He didn't even have copies of all 24 or 25. So for us to now have the complete set, there's not many people out
yet. Actually, maybe that's due to be the next on Patreon, is to finish that set. There's about 7 or 8, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we eventually will have the complete set online, and up until recently, there was not many people who had the complete set, digitally or hard copy.
That's right. So make sure that you check that out. You can have a look at least at the index of what's in there and make your own mind up as to if there's anything there that you would be interested in going to have a look at or get a copy of. As I said, that's all available on our website at chroniclechamber.com. Make that your homepage. Why not? You can email us with any ideas or suggestions or comments at chroniclechamber@gmail.com. or, of course, via our social media links. We're probably most active on Facebook, to be honest, is it still called the Chronicle Chamber fan page, or have I just copied and pasted?
chroniclechamber.com.
chroniclechamber.com, if you search for that on Facebook. And also we're big in the Phantom Collector group, if you want to search that one up. We are on Twitter and Instagram as well. Twitter is @ChronicleTweets, Instagram @ChronicleChamber. And look, if you've just come along to listen to the Grange podcast and you've enjoyed the way that this has gone because you're a massive Grange Wallis fan, or you love your AFL cards and you've picked up on this somehow, but you've enjoyed it and you might love to delve back into the fandom world, you can always subscribe to us on iTunes or whatever your favourite podcast app is, whether it's Podbean, Player FM, what are these other ones, Castbox, Listen Notes, whatever it is. I don't think we're on Spotify. I did search us up on Spotify and we weren't there, so I've got no idea what's involved in getting us there, probably money. Maybe one stage we might get ourselves on Spotify as well. But in the meantime, Jermaine, it's been another longer podcast, but gee, it's always just so entertaining talking to fandom people and fandom creators in particular.
It is, mate. Phantom fans like to talk fandom.
Yeah, they do. And hopefully there's enough Phantom fans who like to listen to us talk about Phantom that you've enjoyed this podcast. So, as always, Jermaine, thanks very much for your time today, mate. Have fun with your Winnie the Pooh and Tigger mural there. I hope you're not sleeping in the princess room.
Yeah, and happy phantoming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shirt, so.
We're in the uniform tonight, so happy phantoming, everybody.
See you guys.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom,
The ghost who walks,
the Phantom,
enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom. He fights